What is going on, everybody? My name is Michael Levan. Thank you so much for joining me today. And what we are going to do is we're going to talk about Liveness Probes and Readiness Probes. Now, don't worry, I got a really quick PowerPoint just to show some theory. And then at that point, we're going to jump into the hands-on goodness. So, what's a Liveness Probe? Well, it determines, number one, if a pod is healthy. It determines if a pod is running as expected. And the Kubelet uses the Liveness probes to know when to restart a container. So for example, if a container inside of a pod is unhealthy, Kubelet will look at the Liveness probe and say, hey, should we restart this thing? Now the next is Readiness Probes. And a Readiness Probe determines if a pod should start receiving requests, if it should start accepting traffic. So the Kubelet uses the Readiness Probe to know, hey, is this pod ready to start accepting traffic? Can it start receiving traffic? So with that, let's go ahead and look at a quick demo here. All right, so as you can see, I have an Nginx deployment YAML, and all this is doing is it's deploying a simple stateless Nginx app. It's running 2 replicas, and it's just the deployment. There's no service or anything like that. Now, really where we care about is under line 21 and 22. We're going to see both of those in a second. We can see Readiness Probe and Liveness Probe. Now, we're going to start with Readiness Probe. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an HTTP GET request. The scheme is going to be for HTTP. And then we're going to be pointing to the index.html. Now, all Nginx deployments by default have an index.html. This is the path for the Nginx image. Now we're going to be doing this over port 80. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set up an initial delay for the check for 5 seconds because sometimes it takes a little bit for the application to get up and running inside of the container, inside of the pod. So I put 5 seconds here, and then the period of 5 seconds is it keeps checking every 5 seconds. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. Now, first things first, I'm just going to show here, I'm running on Docker desktop. So I'm going to run kubectl create -f deployment.yaml. I'm going to run kubectl get pods. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this. Let's see if it's up. Yep, we're good to go. All right, kubectl describe pods. Okay, and as you can see, this pod came up successfully. Let's clear the screen here really quick. Let's do that again. All right, we are all good. We're 19 seconds in. So this kind of shows the Liveness probe is, not throwing any errors. Now, let me clear the screen here. I'm going to run kubectl delete -f. If I can type right, deployment.yaml. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this path here on line 25. I'm just going to put a 1 here. This obviously is not the right path. So I'm going to run kubectl create -f deployment.yaml. Right now we're going to run kubectl get pods again. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab this pod, clear the screen, kubectl describe pods. Okay, and as you can see, the Readiness probe failed. It's showing that it is unhealthy. The message is coming from Kubelet because, again, Kubelet uses the Readiness probes and the Liveness probes to check. So the reason why is, of course, because the path is not correct. Now, we can actually do the same thing with the Liveness probe. So let me go ahead and let me uncomment this. I'm going to comment readiness, right? And we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to clear kubectl create -f deployment.yaml, kubectl get pods. I'm going to copy the pod name. I'm going to run kubectl describe pods, right? And we look like we are good to go here. Now, one more time, everybody. Let's do kubectl delete -f deployment.yaml. I'm going to put a 1 here on line 25 again to throw off that path. kubectl create -f deployment.yaml. kubectl get pods. I know we're we're in a little bit of inception here, but that's okay. Stick with me. kubectl describe pods. All right, and as you can see, the Liveness probe failed as well. So Readiness probes, Liveness probes, super helpful when you have an application that you ultimately need to confirm is running the way that you are expecting it to run. For example, if you have an Nginx application and you have an index.html to serve up a web page, and that web page either does not exist or is manipulated in some way, you should know about it, because at the end of the day, the pod could still be running technically. The deployment could still be running. The container itself could still be running, but the application may not be running, and you should ultimately get an alert on that. So the 3 commands that you want to remember are kubectl create -f, and then your deployment.yaml or your YAML file, whatever you called it. Kubectl delete -f to delete the deployment. Kubectl describe pod's pod name. So with that, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it, and we will see you again next time as always.